Get weird. Okay, so we're going to start here in just a moment with the beginning of the show where we show the intro. But the Canadian, the Dr. Canadian, says that she has a way that we should all say things. Like about should be about because it has B-O-U-T in it, not a boot, Dr. Shawna Pandya. That's right.
Wait. How do you spell honor?
How do I spell what?
I have a question. How do you spell honor?
That's an inappropriate question. Here's the intro, and then we're coming back. Let's go. Space fam, what's going on? It's Saturday night. It is officially 8 p.m. and we are already being silly. It's so great to have you here tonight. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. So before we start about the fact that Dr. Shawna Pandya does not know how to speak proper English, let's go around the horn and talk to everybody and say hello. So we're going to talk with the first person to my left, right, is Dr. Sian Proctor. Dr. Sian Proctor, please give a quick introduction to yourself and your amazing haircut and all the awesome things you do.
Quick introduction. Well, I am Sian Proctor. I'm a geoscience professor, analog astronaut, science communicator, and just explorer. I like to travel, and I teach at a community college, geoscience, but I'm also like to spend time in analog missions, Moon and Mars simulations around the world, and I'm thrilled to be here talking with some amazing people.
Love it. You are amazing, Dr. Proctor, who was a finalist not too long ago in an amazing contest, and we're going to talk about that later and how cool that was. So next up, with his beard and his amazing wife and his super cute, adorable baby and all the things he knows about space and life in the universe, is Dr. Graham Lau. Dr. Graham Lau, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm a cosmobiologist. But I guess I'm an astrobiologist, even though I made up the name cosmobiologist for a blog many years ago. And then I discovered that it's actually been in use for a while by astrologers. But I actually kind of like it. I'm the only cosmobiologist out there, I suppose. Applying science to it. But yeah, I'm interested in learning more about our place in the cosmos, whether or not we're alone. Could aliens be out there? If they are out there, where are they? How do we find them? There's so much, to astrobiology. In my opinion, astrobiology is everything. It's all that we've ever done to try to better understand who and what we are.
Like a boss. Dr. Shawna Pandya, can you please unmute yourself and then join the conversation, because apparently you're busy doing other things. It's good to have you tonight.
I was trying to enter from my laptop, so that's why I look distracted, but you have my full attention on two screens. So
it's wonderful to have you.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Shawna Pandya. I am very Canadian. So I am a physician, scientist, astronaut candidate, aquanaut, public speaker, martial artist, pilot in training, as skydiver, and I think and executive at an immersive medicine tech company that does cool stuff for space. So I think that covers it, and I'm super excited to be here tonight.
Underachiever. Okay, so back to our guest tonight, Marc Leatham. Tell us all about yourself, my good friend. And Marc might be a little. Well, I think he might be good now. Let's see what happens. Marc, 3, 2, 1, go.
Test. So my name is Marc Leatham. I'm living in Los Angeles, and you may notice I'm the only person here other than Ron without a doctor in front of their name, but I am an official space systems engineer. I work for Northrop Grumman, working on a Air Force satellite designed to keep track of ICBMs flying across the North Pole. So it's a pretty involved job, but my claim to fame, if I ever had any, is basically astrophotography. I take pictures of the night sky, the Milky Way, deep space objects like nebulas and galaxies. And in my spare time, I like to go around to different STEAM events, helping people understand that space is so much closer than people think. So during my day job, I'm always working to bring humanity up into space, and during my astrophotography hobby, I'm always working to bring space down to humanity. So that's the gist. I can't wait to learn as much as I can tonight.
Nice. Yeah, but you take incredible photos of the night sky.
Oh, he does.
It's remarkable. I kind of fanboy, honestly, over your photos. It's remarkable.
What? That is a dubious honor, Graham. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to take you shooting sometime. That'll be a
heck
blast.
yeah. I'd love it.
So we want to talk about space news and all the cool stuff that's happening, but let's talk about the fact that Marc was out taking pictures and fell down so hard that it made his phone try to call 911.
Oh man.
Because it was that bad and it ripped his clothes off his body. Sort of. So Marc had a pretty incredible experience recently. How can we not kind of start with something cool like that? So Marc, tell us a bit about the story and then a little bit about the thing that you love so much, man.
So I first off have to ask if anybody has heard about this invention called the one wheel. It's basically like an electric skateboard with a big, like a go-kart wheel in the middle, and you balance on either side of that. Is that just sounding really strange to everyone?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yep,
Yeah.
you're weird.
I've heard of it.
So I was learning, and when you're taking pictures of the night sky, you just hopefully set everything up with autopilot. So this is my setup here. This is a motor that moves my camera with the sky, and I can set it up, zoom in on something like the Andromeda Galaxy, even just with this small lens right here, and just let it run. It gets really boring in the middle of the night, just not really trying to do anything other than let the camera do its thing. This is actually the Sony A7. I see that question over there. I love this camera. If you want to talk shop, let me know. But the one wheel was the new skill.
Dr. Pandya already wants to know.
What was that?
The doctor is already interested.
Yeah.
The doctor is in and she wants to know what it is.
So give you a better appreciation that all this really is just a normal DSLR. I have an interpolometer.
Wait. Just real quick, Marc. If you're going to sell stuff, then you need to let me know beforehand so that way I can put my Amazon influencer links up and I can make some money because I don't get paid for this. What are you doing? You should have told me this beforehand. Go ahead.
That's the only reason I got into astrophotography is to make buttloads of money selling gear instead of spending buttloads of money, because astrophotography is ridiculously expensive. But this camera is just under $1,000. It takes incredible pictures, and you don't need it to do astrophotography. Literally, all you need is probably your smartphone. Smartphones are getting to the point where if you have a small little tripod, you can start taking pictures of the night sky. Stuff like this here. This right here is one of my favorite photos of the Superstition Mountains. And okay, so the part where clothes were coming off my body while doing astrophotography, I'm pretty sure you want that answered as soon as possible.
We don't. We're going to stop it right now. We're going to keep going to somebody else.
Yeah.
Graham, talk to us about life in the universe. I'm just kidding. Back to you, Marc.
Okay, but I will try and wrap things up. I was learning the one wheel, balancing, going 15 miles per hour on a dirt road in the middle of the night while my camera was taking pictures for me. And it just so happened that the one wheel I was perfectly balanced on, and then it disappeared. Literally the sand, dirt, something just made it spin off in the wrong direction. And I landed on my back, whipping my head with a helmet on it, thank you. The brain bucket smacked against the ground, and I came to a grinding halt, like something out of, I felt like Iron Giant falling out of the sky, just hitting the ground. Came to a skidding halt.
Slow motion.
Exactly. I felt every single second of this happening. And then as I was laying there gasping for breath, my phone beeped and said, "Would you like me to call 911?"
What had happened was,
luckily I stopped it from calling it, but I just hit the ground so hard it thought I was in a car accident.
Yeah, no kidding.
So it's been about 3 weeks of recovery after that.
Oh man. Oof.
what?
I'm glad you're all right.
Yeah,
Dude,
no.
seriously, like, really, what an incredible story, and you do some amazing stuff. So we have had a crazy week in the space world, right? So there's been a lot that's been going on, and the first thing we have to talk about is the fact that after 45 years, astronauts landed, like, one, splashdown, pretty cool, but the U.S. has had a rough year. We all know this, so it's kind of a cool thing. So I know everyone here probably has something to say about that, except for Dr. Shawna Pandya, who says that we cannot come and visit her because they're better than us, and we agree. So what does everybody think about this? I mean, this is kind of a change, and there's a lot to this, like what we can do now that we can launch from right here in America, which is still a place that, despite everything else, is kind of the land of the free, the home of the brave, and some things can come from this. So let's start with, I don't see Dr. Sian Proctor. I'm kidding. I'm playing. Dr. Sian Proctor. What does this mean to you? Because I mean, wait. Let's talk about that. This is the beginning, though.
No.
Wait, no. Yeah, go ahead.
To come out of this is splashdown parties. NASA used to have splashdown parties when the astronauts, the Apollo astronauts, came down. How I know this is because I was born on Guam. My father worked for NASA at the tracking station, and my mom would tell me about these parties, these splashdown parties they would have for when the astronauts came back and landed. And so, of course, splashdown parties.
Very cool.
I mean, it's one of the coolest things ever. So now we've got like this big thing that's happening with everything that's going on. But so Splashdown Party 1 is amazing. And it's been a rough year for us, right? So, I mean, can any one of us like really think of anything else that's been inspiring to at least our nation other than space? I mean, we're talking about the first launch. We're talking about Comet Neowise. We're talking about coming back. And I know that that's something that is really incredible. This is, I mean, Dr. Proctor, Space to Inspire. That's absolutely the thing, right?
But that's what I mean by that. It's the celebration, right? Of something successful. I mean, that's the whole point of when we talk about splashdown parties or and just getting together, even though it's a time of self-isolation and COVID, but knowing that we're all watching this happen at the same time and celebrating what this event is bringing us together in a way during a time of unrest and pain and all of these other things that are happening. And so it gives a lot of people hope. And what I love about it is I didn't, I grew up in the shuttle era, so I didn't experience splashdown parties. And so I felt like this was my first one because my parents had talked about them. And then unfortunately they both passed away, but this was my first time actually seeing one. And so it was very special and emotional for me in the sense that knowing that my history with NASA and coming full circle and being able to kind of celebrate that legacy. As you can see here, this was my dad's Apollo 11 certificate. But that gives you hope, when you're worried that something is going to go wrong and it all goes right. I don't think there's anything better than that and worth celebrating than that.
I cannot agree more. And so there's been a lot of human exploration things that are happening, but there's something that's huge. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with Perseverance, but the main piece of this is that it's a search for life on another planet. And I mean, who else could we talk to about the man, the myth, the legend himself, Dr. Graham Lau? Talk about what this means. I mean, I know that one of the things I love about you is that as much as this is the passion that you work on, you are always willing to say, we might be alone.
Yeah.
We cannot say that we can't be alone. We cannot say that the things that some people see in the sky are not aliens. We can't stop ourselves from saying certain things and making sure that we are really getting into every single piece of this. But, I mean, I got to ask you this. We get that back, like the information back, that there's something that's slithering around, moving around, like we talked about on that Space Foundation Discovery Center show the other day. And now we have seen something that moved. It's life. What does that mean to you, like your life's work? I got to hear that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not just what it means to me. Obviously, I've always been a nerd for space stuff, for trying to figure out if aliens could be out there. I grew up loving alien science fiction and video games and comic books and novels and that kind of stuff.
Word.
So for me, it'd be like the culmination of everything I've ever done. However, the big thing is that for us, I mean, the question of whether or not we're alone in our world, let alone the cosmos, has been a driving force for us for a very long time. I mean, ancient peoples created all kinds of stories trying to place themselves, frame themselves in their world, in the cosmos, trying to understand how the stars were moving in the heavens, what was going on in the world around them. And this is one of the biggest questions, the questions that we've asked ourselves philosophically long before we ever even had science, for what it is today. And are we alone? Is there more? What are we? Why are we here? Those are really important questions. And if we find life out there, it'll really help us start kind of getting our head around that why are we here thing. And honestly, like, we do have to admit, we could be alone. It seems weird to say it, but it's true. We have no way of knowing right now if we're alone or not. And maybe we are the universal mistake. Maybe life only happened once to this very small rock, amongst billions and billions and billions of other rocks out there. So it's hard to say right now, but it's definitely a worthy endeavor for us to go look.
All vertebrate embryos are inherently female.
Do I hear Jurassic Park in the background?
Oh yeah, you're about to hear Jurassic Park in the background, because she made a great point about this one, is that life finds a way. And by the way, Jurassic Park's the thing that made it for me. So we got to just throw this up on the screen real quick. One of the greatest things ever.
Novel. And now Jurassic Park, The Lost World.
Hold on. Wait. 1 second.
All vertebrate embryos are inherently female anyway. They just require an extra hormone given at the right developmental stage to make them male. We simply deny them that.
Deny them that?
John, the kind of control you're attempting is it's not
It's
possible. If there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but there it is.
My man. I mean, seriously, by the way, so Jurassic Park changed my life. Mm-hmm. It made me a scientist, and maybe like when I was young, my godmother gave me the book, and I already liked science anyway. I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then I lost my mind over the idea of the fact that we could do some crazy stuff like that. But life finds a way. Tardigrades. I shared something earlier on my Twitter and on my pages that I was talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, name drop, for Star Talk about, I think it was like 3 years ago. And I was talking about the idea of, one, life in the universe, the idea that life could have started elsewhere and there's panspermia, that life is all connected in one way, or there's also the idea of, like, it's all new. There is no DNA. There is no RNA, Dr. Shawna Pandya. So what do you think about the idea of what's out there? What life could be, and if it is what we are, that's cool. But what if it isn't what we are? Yeah.
So here's the thing. So we have so much to talk about, and I don't think 2 hours is enough, is the first thing. When you look at the breadth and literal depth of life that that exists here on this very planet, when you look at
tardigrades,
deep sea creatures that exist that we're still discovering. When you look at everything from jewel octopi to, extremophiles that live near deep sea hydrothermal vents, and then you consider that we have evidence that deep sea hydrothermal vents existed on Mars in the Eritrean Basin. Like that's like we've been saying, life finds a way, and what it will look like is anyone's guess. Because aside from adhering to certain thermodynamic principles, like maximizing the surface to area volume to optimize heat loss versus nutrition intake, for example. Life can come in so many forms, from bears to squids to blobfish. And that's just within one little planet. And then the other flip side of that is, we have to wonder how we'll be able to interact with, if we'll be able to interact with any foreign species without harming it or ourselves. Like, one thing that always blows my mind in the movie Interstellar is, like, they go to this new water world with increased gravity and just wander around without any regard for their immunity. When if I'm going to go take a trip to India, I have to go to public health and get my vaccines updated for another part of the same planet. So there's so much to consider. Like, probabilistically speaking, it's fun and it's easy to imagine that there can be life. As to what form it will take, there's even just looking at the breadth and depth of species that we're still discovering on this very planet is just mind blowing. And so then it starts coming to, and Graham's probably way more qualified to talk about this than I am, but looking at analog evolution here on Earth. If we're finding extremophile life that can exist without sunlight at the deep sea hydrothermal vents, why not look near those places on other planets? If we know water is critical, then why not look at the ice world around the gaseous giant? So there's so much that's exciting about the exploration that we're undertaking. And also about the promise and potential of what is still yet to be discovered. So, super exciting time.
I love it, and so I'm just going to throw this up real quick. 3 years ago, yesterday, I asked Neil deGrasse Tyson this question because I was super excited about it. So I'm nerding out, and so I get to ask him this, and I love that Star Talk shares this all the time, and it always makes me happy. So I'm just going to throw this up real quick. How hard I nerd out about the idea of putting all this together. So here we go. We're just going to hit this real fast.
Be like microbial life on Mars. Do you think it would be more likely that it's a second genesis?
Back that up real quick. Hold on.
Likely that it's a second genesis, or that maybe it's possibly panspermia? And if so, which one would be more impactful on humanity?
Okay, all I heard was sperm, and I lost it.
So that's a great question. So yeah, there are two possibilities. Well, three possibilities. One, there's no life on Mars, and there never was. Another one is there is life on Mars, and it has however it encodes its identity has nothing to do with the way we encode our identity. Mm-hmm. So we have DNA, maybe it's got something else. If that's the case, it is a complete other genesis of life. That will transform biology in ways that perhaps we cannot foresee or imagine. A whole new way of being alive. Right now, biologists, they won't admit this, but you go behind closed doors. In front of the door, they'll celebrate the diversity of life. Behind closed doors, the fact is all life has common DNA. So to an alien, we're all identical, chemically, basically. Right. So essentially, so that would be a stunning fact. An interesting fact, less stunning but deeply interesting, is if it does have DNA. Then either you can have a second genesis, and DNA is an inevitable consequence of carbon organic chemistry, or some base strands of that DNA are identical to DNA on Earth. That would mean at some point the bacteria on Mars transported to Earth and began Earth here. So that would mean there was only one genesis on Earth, and that would have been on Mars. So if that's the case, so in other words, you can see how close to species are to one another by how much of their DNA is identical. Right. And if it's very low down, it's possible that could have. How does that happen? If Mars, all evidence shows, was probably wet and fertile before Earth was. If that was the case, and an asteroid struck, the impact energy can fling rocks into escape velocity and roam through interplanetary space and land on other planets such as Earth. And if that now, how do they get there? These bacteria would be stowaways in
Here comes me yelling.
Crannies of the rocks. Right. Now, those stowaways, they'd have to be able to survive interstellar space for thousands of years. They'd have to get freeze-dried and somehow come back to life upon hitting water on Earth. There are such creatures on Earth. Tardigrades, the water bears. They survive things that are not necessary to survive on Earth because Earth doesn't have that, okay? So
man, I'm just loving you right now. I don't even give a damn about the tardigrade. It's just like, I've never seen anybody in my life go, tardigrade.
So people think that evolution and animal adapts to something. No, nothing adapts. They die. Right. All right. And in the variation of that generation, some may have resistance to whatever is the force that killed everything else. Nothing lives or dies in vain in the tree of life. And so the bacteria the microbes that would have survived are those that happen to have a variation in them that could survive the radiation from space, the temperatures in space, the freeze-driedness in space, and the tardigrades have this property. So that we have a word for this, it's called panspermia. And so that would be interesting too. That's all I'm saying. They're both interesting, but a whole other genesis would be transformative.
So the
scientifically.
Answer to your question is Mars is our baby daddy. Okay, so there you have it.
Mars is the baby daddy, so says Chuck.
I disagree. I think Venus.
I love this.
Venus.
Disagree.
If life started in our solar system outside of Earth, Venus was the better target in the early solar system. Venus would have been far more habitable in the early solar system. Venus is our twin sister planet. It's very close to the size, very close to the composition of the Earth. It's very likely in its early history it might have had oceans like we do now. It probably had a somewhat similar atmosphere early on to what we have now, or at least had in the early periods of the Earth. I think if panspermia happened...
Wait. But Mars might have two, right?
Mars might have two.
So it might be both.
Remember, the sun was dimmer in the history of the early solar system. Venus would have been the more climate planet, the better climate of a planet for life to have started off on, rather than Earth or Mars. If there was some other place in our solar system to look early in the history of the solar system. I'm also a huge fan of Mars. I think Mars is cool, and I definitely am glad we sent Percy. We actually launched 3 missions to Mars over a 3-week period here recently. So a lot of really cool stuff going on with Mars. But man, we got to start doing some more cool stuff with Venus. There's so much more we could learn about the atmosphere of Venus, its history, its geology. Are there any rocks from the earlier eras of Venus that are buried under that surface that seems to have been resurfaced maybe 500 million years ago or so that might have some sign of ancient life in it? We have no idea because we keep sending missions to Mars and not to Venus. And so I love Mars.
Marc is losing his mind. He can't wait to say something.
Explore Venus a little bit as well.
Marc, what do you want to say? I mean,
I'm sorry.
By the way, just real quick, you can't disagree. You cannot disagree with a person that has doctor in front of his name. That's also the astrobiologist. But please go ahead and do it. Do it.
The one point that I want to throw in there is like maybe the reason why Mars is getting so much attention is because as the space systems engineer, I can't imagine building a spacecraft or a rover or any way that we can get the information that we want to prove these hypotheses incorrect or true on Venus. There's no way that we have the technology to be able to get the return on the investment of sending a rover to the surface of Venus nearly as much as we have capability for Mars. Do you have any idea like what the best candidate is for going to Venus to get this information is?
Yes, of course he does, because the person that was one of his mentors is the amazing Dr. David Grinspoon.
There are 2 missions right now that might get funded for this, Da Vinci Plus and Veritas. One of them would go and explore the Venusian atmosphere, primarily clouds. The other one would actually go land on the surface and give us some more idea there. But you're right, it's technologically far more difficult to explore Venus. But, you know, we humans are really good at taking on really difficult challenges.
You could say life finds a way, right?
Yeah, life finds a way, but also I'd say engineers find a way. And so I think, you know, so what happens, we scientifically, we have a question, a passion, a thing that drives us, and we tell the engineers, we're like, hey, we want to go do this. The engineers are the ones who can say, well, you can or can't do it. But usually it's more like, well, we can do it, but it's going to take this many steps along the way to get there. You know, the entry, descent, and landing crane for Curiosity, when that thing landed on Mars, I was so terrified that was going to fail. It was so complex, and it went without a hitch, and it was such a beautiful, complex feat of engineering. I think too few people really understood how impressive that was. And I think we have a lot of really great engineers, not just at JPL, not just in the US, but around the entire world. Engineers in India and Japan and Morocco and Iran and all kinds of places who they can throw their heads at this problem together. And as a world, we can figure this out and go to Venus and do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I just want to throw
Shawna with it.
Venus isn't such this isn't such an alien destination, if you'll forgive the pun. One of my favorite articles was an IEEE article that actually had uh, um, a credible engineering proposal for sending airships, human missions, for exploratory airships to stay afloat within the atmosphere of Venus to gather more insight. So it's there's so many credible destinations that we're learning about in our solar system that have the potential to host life. And I see that there's some questions and some comments about both Venus and both, the potential of alternate metabolisms. And that was also brought up in the video with Neil deGrasse Tyson that you just aired, Ron. And it's going to be a running theme of the show tonight that life finds a way. Like when we look at extremophiles, their metabolisms are unlike anything that we've ever understood. They don't need sunlight. They don't to live. They basically metabolize the noxious minerals that are spewed out from these and ejected from these geothermal vents, these deep sea vents that are spewed out at high temperatures that would kill you or me. And they metabolize, hydrogen sulfide and, noxious chemicals that we wouldn't be able to, by any means, survive. So, there's when we talk about where do we go next, there's so many destinations, and it's kind of like so many destinations, so little time. So where are we going to get the most bang for our buck? What meets that that juggling act of meeting political will, meeting the economy, meeting our long-term goals as a species. And I think that's how we decide. And maybe if it's not Venus this decade, hopefully it'll be Venus the next decade. After that, but there's so many, from what we knew as a kid, what we knew when I was a kid versus what we're learning now about both types and where life can exist on Earth versus where life can potentially exist in the solar system. I would say that this is the best time of any time to explore and ask questions and even get into the field. So it's a super exciting time for any type of science, any type of space science. Astrobiology, life sciences included.
Absolutely.
It's all right. So just real quick. So the comments are getting crazy. So I love this because it's so intense right now. But somebody asked this, and I know exactly the perfect person that can answer this question is how do you justify space funding to go to Mars when small children die from hunger here? And I know somebody that exactly will have the answer to this, Dr. Sian Proctor. It's space to inspire. We solve for space. We solve for Earth. I want to hear the whole thing. Hit us.
Yeah, the big thing is that solving for space solves for Earth, that everything that we do, especially when it comes to human survival, human space flight, it makes us thrive here on Earth. So it's all about being efficient in energy, water, food, shelter, all of those things. If we're going to go to Mars, Moon, beyond, all of that, well, as we tweak all of those systems so that we can survive in places humans shouldn't be. We shouldn't be in space right now, but we are. And what that does is that technology and that knowledge just comes back to Earth, and it makes us better here. And not only that, everything that we do and build for space happens here on Earth. And so it's all here. And then the cool thing is that I actually believe that no children should be starving right now because we have the technology and we have the resources to feed everybody on this planet. We just choose not to. And so it's not about finding new funding models and stuff like that. It's about food storage, food waste, food distribution, all of those things. And space technology can actually help solve that problem with freeze-dried and shipping of nutrients instead of nutrients and water. And so there are a lot of things that we can do, but we choose not to necessarily focus on ending world hunger. And so, and I think that that's just separate from space. I don't think those are things that you take one over the other, because everything that we do in space helps us here on Earth.
Yeah,
Nailed it, as always.
I want
Go ahead, hit us.
to add to what Sian's saying. You know, absolutely, we do hear this argument a lot, and we're even getting some pushback in the chat I see about, you know, why space. And the thing is, like, this, since the beginning of human space flight, since the beginning of space flight period, we have seen constant spin in and spin off technology benefits, both into space technologies as well as terrestrial technologies and terrestrial sectors that have benefited from development in space. And I want to make the point that access to space is akin to empowerment. And so, just to give you a few examples, specifically within the nutrition and the health and the public health sector, things that have benefited within the nutrition and food supply and transport chain, atmospheric scrubbers that we use aboard human spacecraft have been used to scrub the atmosphere in both the food transport chain and also in medical offices to keep the atmosphere clearer, and also increase the shelf life of produce. You know, also in public health, we've used portable like refrigeration technologies to help give vaccines longevity in rural and remote areas that would otherwise not have power to refrigerate vaccines. And the list goes on and on. And, you know, for anyone who's interested in learning more about this, just look up technology transfer programs. You know, they're very well established within NASA and the European Space Agency. And, you know, it's not an either or phenomenon by any means. You know, one feeds into the other, and not just nutrition, not just starvation, but, you know, being able to develop your infrastructure, your telecommunication. These are all things that have benefited from space. So I think we really need to do a good job of advocating for what space gives us as a species here on Earth in the here and now.
Yeah, you can go to NASA spinoffs. I can't drop it into the comments, but I'll drop it here. But NASA spinoffs, they publish that every year, and that's gone back decades of all of the technological spinoffs that are happening because of human space exploration in general.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Since 1996, Spinoff has been producing a magazine every year with a host of medical technologies that come from space, all kinds of things in the sciences, engineering, material science. So spinoff.nasa.gov. You can go there and you can read these magazines from 1996 until this year that show all of these remarkable technologies we've developed through space exploration. It's not just wasting money; it's using money for long-term technological development.
It's the question like you were saying earlier about engineering and how when you say how a scientist comes up with, like, how do we successfully go to Venus and put something down on its surface with that crushing atmosphere and make it stay and work. And it's such a complex problem. It gets you thinking in ways that are unique and developing, and engineers, you know, pushing them to think outside of the box and come up with new technologies. And those are technologies that you can apply there, or, you know, deep in the ocean or someplace else that has a lot of that high pressure scenario. So there's a lot of, you know, analogs to this type of research.
And I just have to point out,
yes,
with
please,
everything that
Marc.
comes from the benefits of putting all this effort into a space program, think of everything that has come from the International Space Station. And because it was an international effort, how many different countries have rights and access to that information and all that research? Think of the upcoming Martian sample return mission. So this is a decade-long effort, which just launched off with the Perseverance rover. It's going to take samples from Mars, even though, like, to the average person on Earth, it's just a simple rock. The rover is going to take this simple rock that means so much to very educated people, preserve it, wait for another rover to come and pick it up, let alone another different spacecraft is going to scoop it up from a Martian orbit, and then send it all the way back to Earth, so the way all the scientists on Earth collectively can work together and figure out the genesis of life in the solar system. But it just points out that this is such a collective effort. I don't think that there's any other industry that really compares to the international collaboration and just the shared body of knowledge that we generally want everybody on Earth to have.
Mark,
And
Mark,
I
Mark,
can't wait
can you
for
please
that.
stop being so articulate, please? I mean, you sound wonderful right now. You're making me look like you're making me look terrible. Continue.
And to just sum it up, space is for everyone. If you're just a random person working at a fast food joint, your passion can be influenced by developments in space every single day to impact your life just as much as all these doctors making us look small.
Okay, so we're talking about this now. We're talking about the possibility that we might find with perseverance, we might find life on Mars. We might find extinct or extant life on Mars. But let's talk about the thing that I obviously love. I work with Explore Mars, and we're doing the Humans to Mars Summit in a couple of weeks. Make sure to check it out. I'll throw the link down below in the scroll. Is the idea of getting humans to Mars and what that means. And there's a lot to this, especially for all of you. So let me think about who to start with first. Okay, so we'll go with this. I want to start with you, Dr. Lau. We can get humans to Mars, and we might have found possible like signatures of life there. If you could be the first person to go out and search for something, what is it that you are looking for? So that people back that are listening to this are new. You are the expert on trying to find that. You're gonna dig to the dirt. What do you look for?
That's a great question. When it comes to life detection, to trying to discover signs of life out there, a lot of us feel that we can't have just one single thing. So if I find something that's roughly the shape and size of a cell that's entombed in some rock on Mars, that doesn't mean it was ever an actual living cell. And if we found DNA, heck, that'd be really cool. If we found DNA or RNA or some other complex biomolecule that life on Earth uses in a Martian sample, that'd be pretty intriguing. We'd also want to check and make sure it's not contamination from our own biology from here on Earth. But there's a lot of other things we want to look for. I'm really excited for Perseverance for one of the instruments that's going called Sherlock. This will be the very first time that we're going to use what's called a Raman spectrometer on another world, specifically looking for signs of life. This spectrometer will let us look at the mineralogy of the rocks that we're looking at on Mars, but it's also going to be looking at organic molecules and helping us to see where there's an interaction of organic molecules with the mineralogy. And that might be one of the very first ways we find potential life detection on Mars. And so I'm super excited for that. I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, though, if there was something walking on the surface of Mars, if there was some
or oozing,
or oozing, or whatever kind of motility it has, that'd be pretty cool. There's a potentially apocryphal story that Carl Sagan, when they were testing out the Viking cameras out in the Mojave Desert, that one of the things he wanted to make sure they got a picture of was a cow or some other animal walking in front of the cameras, just to make sure that if some Martian got up and started crawling across the Martian surface, that we'd be ready with the cameras. And so that'd be really easy to find life that way. But otherwise, we're looking for things like the chemistry, the mineralogy, the geochemistry, trying to pair these things together to understand if anything was living or potentially is still living on Mars. And getting humans there is going to be a huge feat. I want to see humans go to Mars just to do it, just because I'm curious. I want to have humans go explore. But also, humans right now, we can do a lot more with one person in the field with a rock hammer and a test kit than we could with a rover over the course of several months or a year. Because the human can think through a lot faster what they're looking at, the samples they're working with. Having our own laboratory inside of a habitat and having some scientists working in that habitat looking for signs of life on Martian rocks would be so groovy. I look forward to that time.
So let's talk about something that I love, the fact that we have Dr. Shawna Pandya on the show for this, is that there's a taboo thing that people won't talk about, but we have to look at it, is that so some years ago at Space Foundation, we had a movie premiere for The Space Between Us, I think is what it was called. And it was about a woman that was on her way to Mars. And on her way to Mars, they realized that she was pregnant with another astronaut that she was with. And then they had the first kid on Mars. So that's a big thing, right? So we're looking at eventually we're going to have to deal with this. I'm sure everyone here loves the TV show The Expanse, right? So there's a lot of that. So we look at about being.
I don't know. I just saw a tweet today from Shawna that she actually hasn't seen The Expanse.
Oh, I'm sure she would have a lot to say about it, though. But let's discuss this. Is that let's talk about on the way. If we have Elon Musk and doing everything that he's doing, we'll talk about that in a minute because he had pretty much the first steps the other day with what happened with with Starship and its prototype, right? So eventually there's going to be people on the way. They're going to be normal people on the way, not just astronauts on the way to Mars. So sex, babies, life, everything that we see, we will bring life to Mars. What does that look like? And let's talk about the steps for a minute. And I'm of anyone who else can who else can let us know. And I love this. Clear Sky says too busy watching Umbrella Academy. I've been watching it too, so I understand. But Shawna, hit us. There's a lot of steps to go through here.
Yeah, and so just as a brief intro to crash course to life in space 101 is if you take nothing else away from what the space flight environment is like, is that space is trying to kill you. Space is hostile. When you look at the isolation confinement, when you look at the increased radiation, when you look at the effect of microgravity, reduced gravity on every single physiological system, we're affected in every single way. So our bone health, our muscle health, our kidney health, our propensity to form kidney stones, our central nervous system, it's all affected. So then now you throw babies into the fray, and whether that happens by accident, whether that happens deliberately because we intend to become a multi-planet faring species, there's so much to take into consideration. So it's not just about can you gestate, can you carry a baby for 9 months in space. It's what is your gamete production like? Is it altered? So what is your sperm production like? What is your egg production like? Is it altered?
This feels uncomfortable, by the way, Shawna. Thank you. Thank you for calling me out, by the way, Shawna. Make me feel bad.
That's exactly what it's aiming to do. But like, what happens to your normal physiological processes? What happens to your libido? What happens to your bodily fluids? We know fluids behave differently in space. How does that affect the zygote formation and embryo implantation? Are we more likely to have ectopic pregnancies in space, which is disastrous because it's life-threatening here on Earth? So doing an emergency surgery for a hemorrhaging ectopic pregnancy on the way to Mars sounds like the least fun ever, if I'm being frank. And so then, say you do meet that astronomical chance that you do have the egg and the sperm meet and implant in the right place, and then, what happens to development? We know from animal studies in rats and zebrafish and jellyfish that we do see changes. The data from spaceflight and from reproduction in various animal species is so varied at this point. The only thing we can say is further study is needed. We see neuromotor effects in rats at 3 months that disappear. We see increased death rates in wasps that have been flown to space, or in the gametes of wasps that have been flown to space. So we need more data. And then, translating this to the human world, say we meet all these ifs. Say, the baby does gestate properly and develops differently, but properly enough to be delivered. Is the probability of a breech baby more likely because of gravity effect? And what's delivery like in space? Do the pelvic floor muscles engage as easily as they would in 1G? And if not, well, then you have to be prepared for a cesarean section or at least a vacuum delivery. And then that's just adding to the mass and the volume of whatever you're bringing in your medical kit with you to space. Say you have a messy delivery. Are you prepared to transfuse blood products? So this is a very long-winded way of saying that space is scary. Delivery and birth in space and in reduced gravity environments is a huge unknown. But if we're serious about being a multi-world species and having cosmeception, as someone has referred to it in the chat.
Rod Craig, my man.
I quite enjoy that term. We have to start doing the research, but we have to do it in absolutely an ethical way, because there's the ethics of just studying gestation, but there's also the ethics of sending the first pregnant human to Mars, and we have an onus to know if we're deliberately going to start civilizations and settlements. what to expect physiologically. And so there is so much to consider there, but it's just another area for us to really strongly start actually developing fields of study and developing plans A, B, C, D, E, and F in. You don't want to be surprised by a baby in Mars. That's the last thing you want to be surprised.
That's basically the main thing. No surprises of babies on Mars, right?
Yeah.
So
possible.
I mean, okay. So let's talk about this. That is a little bit forward in the future for us, right? So just a few days ago, we had some amazing things happen with SpaceX. So first they landed Bob and Doug. Space Dads are back. And then we had the hop of Starship, which is the beginning of something that's going to be able to take humans to Mars. So let's step back from all like the science and everything of that. And let's just talk about like everyone here would probably love to go to Mars, right? This might really be the first step of, well, but not to Proctor, apparently. I want to. This is my whole thing, man. I'm doing everything I do. Yeah, she's like, no, but I'm really interested in hearing. Well, first, let's go through and say, who here actually wants to go to Mars? Raise your hand. Oh, Dr. Sian Proctor says, yeah, I want to hear that first. Why?
I would, for me, I'm a geoscientist. I love the Earth. I love everything about the Earth. I want to go to the moon, see Earth rise, hit a couple golf balls, collect some rocks, and then come back home.
Word.
But I'm not down a trip to Mars. I have Mars. In fact, I have a Mars meteorite on my wall here, and a Mars. I wouldn't turn it down. But if you're going to give me a choice between going and hanging out on the moon versus going and hanging out on Mars, I'm going to the moon first. I'm a moon baby.
Indeed. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Graham Lau. You want to go? You want to stay? What do you want to do? I mean, married, babies, all the stuff. So you can't really go right now, right?
The SN5 launch, the hop. Hopefully everyone's watched that video. There's many videos. If you haven't seen it yet,
we'll do it right now. We'll watch it right now while you talk.
Let's watch it while I talk. That's fantastic. I gotta say, I grew up in an area in South Central Pennsylvania where we were suburban. We were 20 minutes from the city, but we were also 20 minutes from the cornfields. And so I had a good experience growing up, seeing lots of barns and silos. And for a young space geek growing up, looking out across the fields and seeing these big silos at these barns, in my mind, I was always imagining being on a spaceship inside of that silo and launching off into space, and how cool that would be. And I was personifying the silos. And when you see this launch of SN5 here, and it's a very small launch. It's only 150 meters, a little less than 500 feet. It goes up. It kind of goes over to the side here a little bit and then goes back down. But I mean, how cool this is! This is practically a silo. It's a large cylinder being launched up into the air using the gimbal on the rocket to really move this giant thing around. And when those landing struts come out, oh my gosh, it was blissful to watch that happen and to see this thing come down. I mean, just right there. Oh my gosh, how incredible is that? Come on, guys.
It's the coolest thing ever, man.
It's so sweet to watch that happen. And in my mind, while I was watching this, I was just so reconnected with the young child me, thinking about our future and what we could do together, not only on Earth, but in space. And so, yeah, it's just so cool.
All right, so we gotta hit Dr. Shawna Pandya, who I know is one. I mean, should be. Well, I mean, everyone in the world thinks that you are going to be or are already the first Indian person in space, and there's a lot of I know you deal with all the false like information that goes out there. But Mars, I know you're interested.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to be the first to anything, but the thing is, for anyone who has a space aspiration, you absolutely have to love every aspect of the journey getting there, because there's no guarantees. There's no expectation that if you put in X amount of time that you're guaranteed a spot in space. So you have to love every aspect of the journey, and that's why I do what I do. And yeah, there's a comment that says the child in us loves space. We love discovering. We love knowing. We love questioning. That's what it means to be human. We ask why. For me personally, to go to Mars, to be at the forefront of humanity and expanding what we know as a species, as what we know, as a civilization, cementing our place amongst the stars and being that multi-world faring species. That would be incredible to be part of that journey. And if someone asks me, absolutely, I'm going to say yes. But, there's no expectation of that. There's, it's what does the mission need, and who's the best person to do that. And, even if you were the best person yesterday, you may not be today, right? So you have to be very mission driven, very team driven, and then just do it for the love of the game. At least that's my approach to it. And so that's, I've loved every minute of what I've done in the space sector so far. And it's been a stellar journey, and I will absolutely not apologize for the puns.
I love the fact that you will not apologize for that. So we're going to do the musical guest break here just real quick because this is something from one of my best friends in the world, and I love it. We were actually supposed to play something from my friend Julio, who right now the video will not upload because it's too big. It just is that good. But my friend killed this cover of the song Hallelujah. So this is going to be the musical guest. So to all my friends that are on the show tonight, please take this chance to go and do your thing. And we'll be right back here in just a moment after we show this wonderful song. Maybe it might play. It's not playing yet. It never plays first. Sean Brown, the man, the myth, the legend, one of my best friends in the world, and I love him. We'll be back in just a few minutes after this song.
Well, I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Young faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. And she tied you to her kitchen chair, and she broke your throne, and she cut your hair. From your lips she drew the hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, there was a time when you let me know what's really going on below, but now you never show that to me, do ya? And remember when, well, I moved in you, and the holy dove was moving too. Every breath we drew is hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. Maybe there's a God above, but all that I ever learned from love was how to shoot somebody who'd outdrew ya. And it's not a cry that you hear at night, and it's not somebody who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
My man, the myth, the legend, Sean Brown. He's always incredible at what he does. So there's still so much to talk about, and a few people are still gone. So let's talk about something else. Dr. Graham Lau, the other day, there was something that we were talking about on the live stream for Space Foundation, and we talked about Moxie. And I know that was something you were excited about. So humans on Mars,
Moxie
talk about it.
So
Hit me.
cool. Yeah. So for those watching, one of the big things about getting humans to Mars or getting humans out beyond the Earth is that it's really expensive and difficult for us to take all of our resources along with us. To launch a bunch of extra air, the oxygen for making air, to launch a bunch of extra water, a bunch of extra food, all of these things are very difficult. And if we're going to start building, habitats and then settlements with humans on the moon, on Mars, and other places, we need to be prepared to use the resources in the places we go. Just like if you're out mountaineering and you're hiking in the mountains, you should have some knowledge of how to use the resources when you're out in the mountains. People who've traveled across our planet, long ago, they had to learn how to use the resources in the locations that they discovered and wanted to settle down in. And we had to do the same thing on Mars, on the moon, and other places. In fact, we have a word for this, or term for this. It's in situ resource utilization. It's ISRU. Basically, this means using the resources that are present in place where we go. And a big part of that is trying to learn how to create building materials, how to create air to breathe, how to get water we can extract from minerals, from rocks. And on Mars, a big thing of that is we need to be able to breathe when humans are there. And the Martian atmosphere isn't really the kind of stuff we want to be breathing. It's mostly CO2. It's not a very dense atmosphere. And so Moxie, this experiment on Percy that's going to Mars right now, it's a test bed experiment. It's going to use something called electrochemistry inside of the experiment. And what it's going to do, it's going to take the CO2, this carbon with 2 oxygens from the Martian atmosphere, and it's going to use electrochemistry to break those molecules apart to create carbon monoxide, which we can just blow out into the atmosphere. We won't need that, but it's also going to create oxygen, O2, not only for us to test how we're going to create air for the astronauts to breathe, but it's also oxygen that we can use as an oxidant when we're launching rockets back off the surface of Mars. And so this is a really well-known kind of thing that we know we can do it, but we want to test it now on Mars itself and show that we can do it with the Martian atmosphere in place. And we're going to do it using this rover itself. And so Moxie is really exciting. It's one of the things that's going to start giving us knowledge of how to really put humans on Mars and have them live there in habitats, creating their oxygen from the Martian atmosphere, using the Martian regolith, the Martian soil, which we call regolith, using that as a building material, extracting water from Mars. And Moxie is one really important step along the way for that.
And Marc has a question for you, I think. He just threw in our private chat. So, Marc, hit him up, man. You're still muted.
You're muted.
You're still muted, Marc. And there he goes.
You had mentioned that the electrochemistry had been well proven. We have a really solid understanding of it. What is the justification for taking this huge chunk of the Perseverance rover? Like, Moxie is a big experiment. It's a lot of weight, spending tons of money to send that way. If we already have a really good understanding of the science, what is the benefit of just simply checking that box to say, we've done this again, just on Mars?
Yeah, that's a great question. Totally. That's my son in the background.
Oh, we hear the baby. What's up? Nothing.
But yeah, so electrochemistry is a very well-known thing. Electrochemistry is how batteries work. We use electrochemistry in lots of different things and lots of applications and engineering across all the technology that we humans use. You use things that are the results of electrochemistry every day. It's in your phone. It's everywhere. Yes, it's well proven. We know a lot about it. And we could actually recreate the Martian atmosphere in a laboratory setting and test something like this. And so, yes, we can do these tests on Earth. But it is important to start testing these things in place on Mars to make sure that we can actually take these instruments to Mars and do it there. It's this idea that we really want to be prepared for the environment, and we're not going to be prepared unless we actually test those systems in place. And so Moxie, while we could do all those tests here on Earth and say that it's the same, it is important, I think, for us to have these tests in place. The same way that we can recreate the Martian regolith. We can recreate samples that are very similar to what we're seeing with our rovers and landers on the surface of Mars. And we could use them here on Earth to recreate building materials and show how that would work on Mars. But for the early astronauts who are going to be using those materials, it'll be important for us to make sure that whatever process we're going to use on Mars will actually work on Mars before we start sending humans there. And so I think that's really the justification, is making sure that we're prepared for doing these things on Mars when we get there.
So I continue to get this question of like the poor children and Ron and all these things about like, we're going to do this and we're going to do all this stuff out there. Like, it doesn't, like, there's not 7-something billion people here, and we cannot like face all these challenges. So let's get deep. Let's really talk about it. Everybody here is brilliant and has their ideas. There's no one here that's not trying to save this planet. There's no one here that says this is the only place that we can be, that there's nowhere else. I mean, so we have to go do something else. So each one of you has ideas about stuff. In particular, Dr. Sian Proctor was this close, and she should have won a really amazing contest about this. Is that space technology allows us to solve these problems and fix these problems. If you can be in this landlocked area in Africa, and there's a way for us to find water for those people through space technology, which is something that we highlight and we love and we care about at the Space Foundation. That's why we have the Space Technology Hall of Fame every year, where we highlight these amazing things that are going on. So, Dr. Proctor, I'm going to go to you first. All of this can be solved with what we're doing right now. That's our whole point of what we're doing. So I want to hear from you.
Oh, you specifically asking if there's no place like home? And
no place like home. Was I click my red Mars heels?
Well, I mean, even if we get people living on the moon and Mars, most of the majority of human life is always going to be here on Earth until there is no Earth to some extent. And to me, when I think about interstellar travel and humans actually thriving in outer space, I actually think it's going to be some kind of hybrid, or for especially when we're talking interstellar and going deep space, that we're going to be, not to throw that wild card out there, more cyborg like, where it's a combination of bio and technology and stuff. That's how humans will exist beyond Earth for the long term. But when it comes to what we can do for Earth and climate science and climate change and desertification and hunger and all of those things, space technology is helping us to be able to solve these grand challenges. And the reality is they are grand challenges because it can lead to our very extinction here on Earth. And a lot of times people are like, well, there's no doubt that eventually our solar system and Earth is not going to be here. So if humans are going to survive, we have to get out into the stars. But the reality is that's a long ways away unless some kind of like event like an asteroid or our own destruction comes into play. But when we're thinking about the challenges of climate change and sea level rise and people starving, these are things that we can tackle, but we need advances in technology and stuff to help lead the way in a lot of these instances. And so when you're talking about carbon dioxide and being able to take it out of the air and to, break it into components and all of that stuff, that's technology that we can use here on Earth. All of that when it comes to radiation exposure and things like that, technology that we can use here. So all of these things that we're testing on Mars are things that we can test. Hydroponics, if you have soil, how do you make better building materials with resources and rocks? How do you break rocks into the components so that you can get the elements that you need out of it? All of these things that we want to test on Mars are all applicable here. And so that's what makes it fun and exciting.
I love this. And here's the whole thing is that for us with space, everything we're trying to do is trying to still, none of us cut out the other thing. We all love Earth. When I fell in love with space and science, when I watched Cosmos, it completely changed my life. I was damn near the one cuss word tonight, agoraphobic. Like I didn't want to leave. I had no desire to go and swim or climb mountains or do anything. And it changed everything for me. I had to go out and I had to see the world. This is the one planet that we have to go explore. And I went with some amazing people and Dr. Uliana Hordesky. Hordesky. After 5 years, I finally got it right. She was going to be our guest tonight, one of our other guests tonight. And that whole idea is that as we go and explore, we see ways that we can make things better in what we do. And that's what's so important about this.
Yeah. Because a lot of times people always associate me with wanting to explore space, but I spent 2 months last summer on the JOIDES resolution looking at drilling core samples for climate science. And our oceans are so underexplored, an amazing place. And so much to do here on Earth. So I like to consider myself a geo explorer, as much as an astro explorer. And so I like both equally, but again, no place like home. No place like home.
Seriously, I mean, it is. I mean, we're all excited about this, right? So I know there's a little bit more. Well, hold on, if I may, I don't want to go too far because I want to make sure that everybody gets a moment to say something because I know Marc's excited. Marc's grinning ear to ear and he's glowing. So I want to hear Marc's thoughts on this, if I can, real quick.
So
he's like, I got so much to say.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief, but there's one thing I've noticed as I explore space for myself through astrophotography. It is so satisfying to learn this really difficult hobby and to be able to see, my picture's all blurry and I need to change these settings, and then it takes multiple trips to get the one shot I want. And finally, when I finally have that picture of the one galaxy, that one nebula, it's so great to feel like I have a view that is so unique and special. And then on top of that, there's so much I can learn scientifically about the photo. Like, why is it this color? How big is it across? How long would it take there to travel in a spaceship? And all of these things don't really benefit the world at large other than me just sharing a space picture. But the thing that gets me every single time, if there's anybody online that appreciates my art, I promise you 80% of all the likes, of all the shares, of all the attention goes to a space picture with Earth in it. If it's a mountain range in a Milky Way, if it is a palm tree with the Andromeda galaxy behind it, if it has context that relates the space element that is artistically difficult, like really fought for to get these photos. If there's something that brings and grounds the person to their relationship with that space object, that exploration is yours. The second you see that photo, you have a context, you have a relationship to it. And I really feel like that's just, thank you, perfect example here. That's actually Half Dome in Yosemite, looking at just the flowing Milky Way coming up and over it. If that had just been a picture of a nebula per se, people would still appreciate it. But the second that you have a terrestrial floor, sort of like trees in the background, that right there just makes it so much more relatable. And I think we have to keep that in mind as we explore. It's one thing to go out there to tackle hard challenges and explore space with the perspective that we're trying to solve questions and go to a new place. But if we really forget our context looking back towards Earth, we sort of forget who we are, where we're coming from. And that's why I'm always focusing on that sort of comparison. Are we bringing humanity to space, or are we bringing space closer to humanity? And I feel like science, if we don't forget what that impact is back on Earth and we're just trying to go to space, we're missing half the point.
I agree with you enough, man. I mean, we're talking about 6.5 years ago. We're talking about a guy that was making tons of money. Like, I was killing it. Life was supposed to be, it's the whole American dream, right? And I talk about this a lot in everything that I do, is that I was a dude sitting there and I had no desire to care anything about space. And it just blew my mind once I watched those first 15 to 20 minutes of Cosmos. And it changed everything for me. And it's changed it for me so much that now I get to do things like this. I get to talk to people like you all. And it's once you can connect people to it, you can tell me that there are hundreds of billions of stars. You can tell me that there are hundreds of billions, trillions of galaxies. We cannot wrap our minds around what that is until someone shows us that. And by the point in Cosmos, when I actually seen it, where he was showing this whole screen, it was my super huge HD TV, and I was imbibing in something here in Colorado that's legal. And as I watched it, I was just losing my mind about this idea that as wide as my wall was, the smallest, faintest thing I could see in this image was a galaxy with hundreds of billions, possibly trillions of stars. And I lost my mind. It changed everything for me. It changed it all. And every single one of us have had that moment. And that is that's the amazing thing, is that it's Dr. Proctor is just losing her mind right now, right?
Everybody should watch Cosmos.
You have to. You got to, man.
Way, no, the
Colorado. You got to watch the Colorado way. But we're talking about a kid that was just like, I was sold on this. I had to be the best DJ in the world. I had to make 6 figures. I had to make more than 6 figures a year. I had to have all this crap. And it changed it all when I watched that. And I could not get enough. And if I can do what I can do now with less than 2 years of community college and barely out of my GED, that I can bring people like the people that are on this show on here tonight. There is a space for you, all of you, in space. And that's kind of the thing that matters.
The community college made Ron everything that he is today. So just keep that in mind, people, because the community college is awesome.
Community college is great. And it was something that really mattered to me. And I don't know why. Just something just happened there. That was weird. So I just took my background. Now it's weird. But yeah, so there was a lot that happened with that. And it really was. It's like that was my start. But again, with only just a little bit of a GED and a couple of years of community college, I knew there was a way I could share some stuff. And that's what we have so much here. But each person that's on this call had a time where they looked at the sky. There was something that connected them that made this so important to them. Graham has not always been a doctor. He has not always been this guy. Graham, what was the thing that that set you on this path and made you the man that you obviously are amazing at these days?
Wow, that's a huge question, Ron.
Hit me, Goose.
We all have our own stories. We all have our own past. I don't know exactly when I started with my interest in space, but I definitely know for me science. And so I've told this story a few times before. I'm sure some have heard it. When I was 5 years old, my parents took me to see a movie called Young Einstein. It was a movie made by a guy named Yahoo Serious. It was a comedy film about a fictitious life of Albert Einstein being an apple farmer from Tasmania who learns how to split the Tasmanian beer atom. And it was full of great 80s rock and roll music. I was 5 years old when I saw it. And I went home that night, and I wanted to do two things. I wanted to be a musician, and so I made my very first guitar out of a shoebox. And I told my mother that I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be involved in asking these big questions about the universe and why we're here, and what is time, what is relativity, what's going on in the world around us. And that kind of started me in my science journey. However, to your point, I've not always been a good academic. I've not always been a great student. In fact, I had a time in my life where there was a period where I was a junkie and a high school dropout for a short bit. And I was a teenage father for a very short bit as well. And it was the adoption of my son when I was 17 years old that helped me to get my stuff together. I decided after that I would clean up, get off the drugs, go back to school, and actually earn a diploma so I could go to college and maybe actually continue back into that dream I'd had as a child of being involved in these big questions. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I would pursue philosophy or science, since to me they're kind of the same thing. They're ways of asking these very large questions about our place in the universe.
And it's an incredible thing to talk about, like where you've been, what you've done, and the things that you've accomplished.
Yeah, and 19 this year.
Yeah, I mean, so Dr. Shawna Pandya, have you ever failed at anything? Thank you for making us all feel terrible. I mean, but seriously though, I want to kind of go back with this. Well, let me back this up. I was in a room full of people for Project Possum that were all these wildly brilliant people, and it just was. Alyssa Carson, who is an incredible person that was 3 years younger than me, was already smarter and more educated than I was, and we were doing we were doing homework together, and I was doing pre-calculus, and she was doing calculus-based physics. Put that in your head right there. So, hey, here's the old goofball that's kind of like goofing around and like having fun. And everyone there made me feel welcome. And that's the amazing thing about the space industry, is that there is a place for you, and that I never felt out of place, and it's awesome. But Shawna is someone that is so incredibly, she has so much going on for her that will make you feel like you have never done anything in your life. You could have been in the woods and delivered a baby, and that baby could have been Jesus, and you would still feel lesser than Dr. Shawna Pandya. So Dr. Shawna Pandya, let us know. Did you follow the chair? That's amazing. Please tell us how incredible you are, and we love you. You're awesome. You are still muted.
To prove I'm human, I absolutely leave my mute button on, like all of us do.
What happened was...
So I did fall off my chair there because you made me laugh so much. So I mean, coming back to the broader themes. So first of all, I've always had suboptimal outcomes. And I think there's no such thing as a person who has not had a suboptimal outcome. And it's just, how do we take that lesson and how do we break it down and how do we get productive lessons learned for the next adventure? Like, let me tell you about my skydiving gone wrong. Like, I have stories. I have taekwondo fights that, did not, where you find out the hard way that you have to keep your hands up. So it's not like we've all had our suboptimal outcomes, but coming back to the broader theme that everyone's touched on, is that there is space for all of us, and space needs all of us. We had a bit of debate going on earlier from the public comments about, well, why concentrate on space? Because there's so much else going on. But the thing is that the beautiful part about the beautiful and the challenging part about being human is that there's so many problems that they're not going to be solved overnight. There's problems with social strife, there's problems with disease, there's problems with world hunger. So there is a role for whatever problem it is that you want to solve in your lifetime. I can guarantee you, please put all your effort on it if you're passionate about it, because that particular problem needs you. And we're not going to run out of problems to solve. So we need all manner of people. We need all manner of curiosity. We need all manner of explorer, because as Sian was saying earlier, there's a role for the geo explorers. we've only explored 5% of the oceans to date. We've explored more of the surface of the moon than we have of our oceans, right? So there's so much to be done. And then the other side of this is, look who we've sent to space. We spent the doctors and the pilots and the scientists, but we haven't sent the communicators, the journalists, the storytellers, the poets, the actors, the entrepreneurs. Like, what happens when we give them that platform? So, it's not just for one type of person. And I'm so glad that you feel welcomed, because that's what space is for. It's for all of humanity, and we can't do it for all of humanity. We can't go to space for all of humanity without all of humanity. So, you're one of us, Ron. You're the catalyst who's brought us here tonight. So, and I hope that's true, that for anyone who's watching out there tonight, that they get that sense as well.
I mean, and that's something I would like to share with everyone, is that I'm not a big deal. I'm just a guy. I'm not brilliant. I'm nothing. I'm nowhere near the people that are on this show tonight. But the thing is that because I care and love this industry that I'm in, I've been able to be a part of creating some things that are really, truly incredible. And I'm just a piece of it, just a small piece of that. From the Out Astronaut project to what we're doing with the Mars Needs Women, what we're doing there. And the fact that we have Dr. Sian Proctor on our board at Explore Mars is that I was one of those people that was allowed to say that. I was just a social media guy. I'm just a social media guy. That's one of the reasons I make the joke whenever I do stuff in live streams for Explore Mars, is that that's not how I am treated there. I am someone that has an opinion, and I love the people I get to work with. They're all incredible. There's only a small group of us. There are 5 of us. So while I might be the social media guy or the communications guy, there's so much more to that. And the space industry is ready for you, and you have something to say and something that you can give. And with all the things I've messed up and I've done, all the stuff that has happened to me, for some reason I matter. And that's the best thing in the world. And everyone here matters. And at one point, they were just people looking up the stars and saying, like, I want to go there. I want to do something. And everyone here has done that. So I'm going to start with Graham first, and then we'll go around because we got 30 minutes left. So I kind of want to hit you guys. There's a lot that's going on right now in the space world. I want to hear what you're most excited about that's coming up. I don't care if it's we're gonna have a helicopter on oh my God, it's my favorite, Titan. I don't care what it is. I want to hear it. Graham, go first.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dragonfly is going to be really cool. It's going to be a little drone flying around Titan. I love it. Perseverance, I'm super excited for. Also, remember, Tianyan-1 just launched, as well as the UAE's Mars mission called Hope. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with Mars. Like I mentioned earlier, there's 2 potential missions that could end up getting funded. At least maybe one of them could get funded to go to Venus. So much cool stuff going on right now in the robotic exploration of our solar system. So much cool stuff going on for us astrobiologists, for learning more, to try to figure out if there could be life out there elsewhere in our solar system. So as far as our solar system is concerned, the thing I'm most excited about right now is Europa Clipper. So Clipper's supposed to launch maybe around 2024. It should get out to the Jovian system sometime before 2030, hopefully. And it's going to be doing flybys of Europa and Jupiter together, flying by both of them. And it's going to give us so much more knowledge about Europa than we've ever had before. We're going to figure out a lot more about how deep Europa's ocean might really be, how thick that icy crust might be, whether or not there are plumes of liquid water coming out of Europa the same way there are for Enceladus. There's so much we're going to learn. It's also a huge astrobiology mission, trying to figure out if we can find signs of life in the near surface of Europa, if the ocean has communication with the surface. So that's really huge. Unfortunately, there's not a lander currently planned to be launched. Originally, we were going to launch one not long after Clipper that would get to Europa not long later. But currently, that's not looking like it's going to happen. However, a lander is likely to eventually happen for Europa, and the Europa Clipper will give us the knowledge we need to figure out where to land that mission to start looking in the ice of Europa, looking for potential signs of life. So solar system-wise, I'm super excited for Europa Clipper. It's going to be a huge mission, and I'm really jazzed for it.
All right, I'm stoked about that. Mark, I think I can guess what your favorite's going to be. It's probably going to be JWST. It's probably going to be James Webb when he goes next Halloween and says, "You look out," because I mean, I can go back to the very first interview I ever did, and it was with the head of NASA astrophysics, and he talked about everything they were doing. And when he told me, grinning ear to ear, like nearly 60 years old, how stoked he was for this, I can't wait. But I still want to know though, like, what's your thing? Hit me.
So yeah, I absolutely have to agree that James Webb Space Telescope is going to literally and figuratively like just explode the universe with what we can see and what questions we can finally answer. Um, Working at Northrop Grumman is a wonderful treat because I can actually just take a break and walk down the street and go inside of the observation bay of the clean room where the James Webb Space Telescope is just sitting there, and I can move around and see myself reflecting in the parabolic, the curve of the gold mirrors. So it is amazing to think that as a space systems engineer, I can literally be within proximity of these incredible instruments that are going to change the way that we see the universe. But the one piece of kit, the one incredible piece of technology that I just want to sink my teeth into, learn everything I can about it, is Starship. SpaceX's Starship is just an amazing feat of turning engineering upside on its head, really applying new principles and trying to get to space differently, trying to get reusability involved. And when it comes to me being a payload guy, as opposed to a rocket guy, it's amazing that my career, I'm sticking it on designing and enabling payloads. And this rocket, which I legitimately am sort of trying to stay away from the rocket industry myself personally, this rocket's going to change the amount of payloads that we send to space, all the science we can do in space, for the simple fact it'll be cheaper. So Shawna had an excellent point that when it comes to the effects of microgravity versus like 1/3 gravity on living in space, we just don't have any idea anywhere other than Earth gravity and microgravity. When it comes to astronauts living in space, they can spend so much time and give us so much data about a microgravity environment, but we really don't know about mammalian life or life in any respect on Mars when it comes to different levels of gravity. So to do the experiment of taking just a self-contained rat lab, just a box full of everything that mice would need, water, pellets, enough for it to go for a year, and then put it in a spinning centrifuge and put it in orbit around the Earth, so that way we can see exactly how well these mice do in 1/3 the gravity of Earth. That is an experiment that would take so much money today, let alone incredible engineering to make sure these things don't die and we can get the information back. But the fact that Starship is starting to turn everything around, that like for a while now, elementary schools have been able to get CubeSats up into space. And so at the end of the day, imagine when everybody's trying to discover space and it is just simply accessible from the dropping cost of getting into space because of Starship, let alone going to space ourselves. That's what I literally dream about every single day now.
I love it.
Hopefully all that made sense.
It made amazing sense, man. So next. All right. The challenge to the doctor that does it all. What is her thing? What is the thing that excites you the most?
I mean, I feel like you could be referring to both of us here. You could even say,
I know.
I should say this. Hold on. I'm sorry. So in my realm here, it will be Dr. Shawna Pandya and then Dr. Sian Proctor.
I mean, you could have also said Dr. SP, and the same confusion would have ensued. So,
Dr. SP.
Yeah, so I am very, very excited about the future of human spaceflight and human exploration. Especially with the springboard and the path that we've laid out towards Mars, and that starts with Lunar Gateway as well as Artemis. For those of us, who are just inspired and thrilled by the prospect of the first woman to put boots on the moon, and whether we adhere to that 2024 timeline or whether it gets bumped back, but the fact that we have plans to send the first woman to the moon is exciting, and it's exactly what the Apollo generation was. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin laid boots on the moon, it's the same thing for this generation. and what the significance of what it means to be sending lunar gateway and a space station to lunar orbit, what it means to be sending, a permanent human surface operations and presence and exploratory missions to the moon, and to be using it as a test bed to get ready for Mars, and then to, when we're finally ready, send humans to Mars. I'm super excited about that, and also excited about the future of space medicine. Excited about the challenges that will come of being in such a remote, resource-limited environment, dealing with the communication delays, which, at the maximum alignment and the maximum delay between Earth and Mars can be a 46 to 48-minute round trip delay. Excited about developing the technologies for that, as well as the role that they'll play for helping terrestrial medicine. I think it was a rather.
She's so deep. I was like, oh, hey, what's the one thing you want? She's like, I will kill you all with the awesomeness of what I want to do. I love that.
It was a rather predictable answer, but it
wasn't predictable. It was awesome.
There's so much that's happening in the future of human spaceflight, and as I think became clear from this conversation, is there's so many disciplines and so many nations that will have to come together, and so many roles to be filled, that it also has a lot of promise for international cooperation, technology development, and just exploration in general. So that's what excites me.
I love that. Okay, so who's left? Dr. Sian Proctor.
I'm going to say that I just went in a form of
Okay, wait,
shock.
just real quick. Dr. Proctor, if I may ask, I'm going to have to hit the bathroom real quick. So please give us a long run, because I know you have something amazing to say, as always you do.
I really said what I wanted to say, and he did it way better than I
kill it. Give us a lot.
So we're good. Shawna, I love how he left me hanging here with but it's Artemis and the first female footprints on the moon. And I'm excited about that because that person is alive right now. And she just doesn't know, and we don't know yet who that's going to be, but I'm super excited. And I can't wait to see that moment, because like Shawna was saying, that's our Apollo moment. And I was born 8.5 months after Neil Armstrong took those famous first steps. So I am a celebration baby. And I imagine all of the people who will be celebration babies for the first female to step on the moon. And so that's exciting. But I like thinking about how all of what's happening now, this kind of renaissance in space exploration that's happening, is inspiring. It's inspiring the next generation. It's inspiring the scientists. It's inspiring science writers, and it's inspiring artists and engineers, but not just in the United States. I mean, worldwide. Again, like Shawna was saying, it's inspiring us on a global, connected level. And when we think about getting along and crew cohesion on Starship Earth, right? Space is, I think, a leader and an example of how we can work as internationally and cooperatively to hopefully get things done. And again, solving for space solves for Earth. So that idea of creating the future that is just and equitable and diverse and inclusive, that Jedi space, as I'd like to say, just equitable, diverse, inclusive space, not only on the moon and Mars, but bringing that here and helping us be better here on Earth. And I can't think of anything better than that.
So real quick, someone says, bets on Jessica Meir or Christina Koch. Who do you think is going to be the first woman on Mars? The first woman on the moon.
Oh, come on. Jessica Watkins. She's a geologist.
You think so? I mean, you think there wouldn't be someone before that?
Wait.
No, I didn't say Mars.
2 women. You know how they say they were sending the first woman and then the next man? Just send 2 women. We got this. You know?
Yeah.
In our best.
I know. I think you do too. Yeah, I agree.
I love it.
Of course.
Can I point out for a second though? 12 people walked on the moon already. The best moon rocks
Thank you.
came from the one who was a geologist.
Well, here's the question though: is that there's a lot of people that say that it should be an entire woman crew that goes to Mars. But here's the question though: I was like, well, I mean, for the first woman that will be on the moon, that's great. That might lead to an entire woman. So there's a lot here. So what do you all think? Anyone in particular that you root for?
You want me to just say yes to all of what you just say? Yes?
All of them? All of them.
Women,
of course, all of
women
them.
on the moon, just send women. Yes. No, there's a lot of thought on why that is. My good friend Kate Green, who was in the High Seas Habitat with me in the 2012, the very first High Seas mission, she wrote a fantastic article for, I think it might have been Slate back in 2014, 15 on the case for an all-female crew going to Mars. She's done a lot of research in, we eat less calories and take up less weight and all of those things. And all of these things are critical when it comes to how much it costs and the overall expense. Because if you send, 4 females to Mars on a 3-year mission and they eat half the amount of food as a all-male crew, what would that mean, in terms of weight and expense? So there's a lot of really interesting things, but there's also, Shawna can talk to this about some of the physiological reasons, maybe.
Right.
For sure.
Shawna, hit us.
Yeah, I definitely have thoughts. And so, like we talked about.
I definitely have thoughts. I'm sure you do.
We talked earlier.
As you should. As you should.
Where do we go next in the solar system when there's so many fabulous destinations? And at the end of the day, we have to realize, everything we do ultimately comes down to an engineering trade-off study. What is the most bang for our buck? And it's the exact same. It's no different for crew selection. And so, Sian and Kate make excellent points about, crew, resource utilization. But then you also have to look at mission objectives and what will lead to the most productive outputs for the mission. And what the psychological data says is that mixed gender crews actually tend to be the most productive. And so if we're looking at that as one of our outputs for mission success, and we also have to consider that. And then, coming back to Sian's Jedi principle, which is excellent, by the way, if we're going to be just, equitable, and inclusive, if we're going to say we're going to do this for all of humanity, we should do it with all of humanity. And so it cannot just be one gender, and it cannot be non-inclusive of the gender non-binary, right? So we do have to be very inclusive in all those respects. And so it is going to ultimately be a trade-off study between, who who utilizes less crew resources, what crew composition culturally, just in terms of discipline, in terms of gender and non-gender, make the most productive crew. And then, also coming back to the physiology, there is some evidence that reproductive organs amongst females can be more sensitive to radiation. But then there's also data saying that, an older person is more likely statistically to develop cancer anyways. So some people made the argument for sending older crews. So there's so much data out there to parse through, and so much more to figure out when we look at who will have the right stuff for when it comes to going to Mars or to the moon. And then the other thing that we have to consider is the right stuff for Gemini era is different from Apollo era, and the mission profile involved with the Apollo missions is different for an ISS short stay versus a long stay mission. And certainly we can expect it will be different for new Artemis era, the Lunar Gateway missions, as well as Mars and beyond. So there's a lot of food for thought for you. But the good news is it means that we'll need more astronauts.
It does, but I just want to
Awesome.
throw in here, but when
Sure.
it comes to the right stuff and choosing the right stuff, who makes that decision is typically,
Everything has changed now. I hope.
The people
I mean, well,
who are
let's ask that though.
Well,
I mean, Dr. Proctor, I mean, have things changed though about who the people are that are making that? Do you feel that that's changed?
The selection process, right? So who's in the decision on the selection process makes the decision of who has the right stuff, which in turn makes the decision of who gets to go. And so seeing more diversity in leadership in higher areas of the space sector is incredibly important for us to have that, just equitable, diverse, inclusive space that we aspire to have. And so that's one of the things that, it's easy to say that, well, we'll just send the right person. Well, who's making the decision on who's the right person and what the right stuff is? And so that's the variable there. I think.
I mean, this is a question to both you and Dr. Proctor and Dr. Pandya. Are the right people in place now? Has the world changed enough that we're going to make the right decisions for this? I mean, how do you feel? I mean, both of you are both people that have, at one point, your parents and you have dealt with so much. I mean, I know I've dealt with so much like myself because whatever I am, I'm not normal to people. And Dr. Proctor, you and I have talked about
That's
this.
the problem right there. Right?
No. I mean, what I'm talking about when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Like, because I had the afro, because I had all this stuff, and I grew up in West Virginia in a very different place. I was just enough off to people that I wasn't enough. But
Exactly.
The world changed. In West Virginia, where I grew up, gay marriage is completely fine. Things have changed. Now everything's different. But is it that different enough that we are really going to take that to where it says it's an equity thing, not an equality thing, that it says you have these skills, you should be a part of this conversation, and you should be the lead for this? What do you think?
I think we still have a ways to go. And if anything, this summer and Black Lives Matter shows that we still have ways to go. And so I don't necessarily, I love the change. My goodness, I am so glad I don't live in my parents when they were growing up in segregation and all of that. And so I look at what I've been able to do in my life compared to what they were able to do in their life. And that gives me hope because we're definitely headed in the right direction, but we still have a ways to go. And so it's something that I don't think we can just sit there and say we're there. I think it's something that we are continuously working towards that, Star Trek Federation. Yep. I'm a Trekkie.
Me too.
So, and that idea of inclusiveness and diversity and it not mattering when right now it does matter, and we need to support that. And I think the biggest thing that we can do and be mindful of is our language and thinking about how we use words and talk and represent space in the future of space so that everybody does feel included, even though statistically and looking at the numbers, most people have not been included when it comes to space exploration.
Well, you make a great point, and it was while we were doing the diversity panel that you did, is that you and Shawna are very close to me, and I don't always say that you're the doctor, that you are the doctors. And Shawna mentioned the same thing too. And we're really close, but and I'm not saying that I necessarily do it more for Graham than I do for others, but now I make sure that I say that I always say that, and I try to at least say it a few times. Well, I may have you are such amazing people in my life that I can't call you Shawna and Sian and Graham. I need to make sure that I also give the respect that you deserve by saying that you are Dr. Proctor, you are Dr. Shawna Pandya, you are Dr. Graham. And even whenever we were talking about that, and I mentioned the other day, even Janet mentioned that said, it's like she was wondering how to do it. I'm like, well, I will start with that and say all these people, and then I might call you by your names after that, but we're also close. But I still would do it for Graham. and I might not do it for you, for either one of you. And that's something that matters, that we should do that. That's a microaggression thing or something we need to pay more attention to. So for me, that's something I'm trying to pay, really, really make sure that I'm aware of.
Well, and I think all of us have those kinds of things that we're striving to be aware of, and that's the best that we can do, is try to notice our language and think about it in a inclusive and diverse manner, and that goes for, it doesn't matter, you know, your gender or your skin color or any of that, because we all are struggling with it, and if we can recognize that we all have our own biases and our own prejudices and our own fears and all of those things, but we strive to be better, and thinking about that Jedi space that we want to have. Oh, I just want to start. Can we just put me in the future? I want to go.
You're in the future. Well, I mean, but here's the thing too, is that we have to there are two men here that I know that always work on this, and that's one of the reasons that I love both of them to death, and one of the reasons that I love having them on here. And Graham's really is someone that's all about that, and that's one of the reasons. One, I love the guy to death, and we've been close since we first met, and it's been a really great thing. But he has done this for years with what he does with his show, and now a lot of people are like trying to step up and say you should have more people on. You will never not see, the breadth of life on the show that he does, and he brings a lot of people to light that should be paid attention to, and that's one of the reasons that, again, he's one of my favorite people. So, but Graham, I mean, it's you're handsome dude with a shit ton of fucking. I'm sorry, I just dropped the F-bomb. You have a ton of background in what you do, but it matters to you to bring everyone in, and again, the reason why I will cuss and I will get this excited about it is that this matters to us, and it matters to you. So I want to hear your voice on this.
Yeah, there's this issue, right, in the history of humanity. There have been so many gatekeepers, so many people who've hindered great minds, great talent from rising up and contributing and being part of what we do. As many others have said before, I don't really care as much about who's winning a Nobel Prize. I care far more that there have been many people through history who've been forced into slavery and starvation, denigrated and kept back, held back by gatekeepers who haven't been allowed to be involved in this journey of exploration. And who knows what some of those people could have done for us, what they could have shared, how they could have enhanced our knowledge of ourselves. And so we are humans together. We are curious. We want to explore. We want to know more. We want to know about our world and life here and whether or not there's more out there. The we is all of us. It's all of us together. And one of my greatest fears for the future is that if we don't get our act together and start doing a better job of helping others rise up, of making sure that all voices are heard, we're going to harm ourselves, because we're going to lose out on all that great potential of all these people who are out there who can contribute and who want to contribute. I'm contacted almost on a daily basis these days by young people from around the world, from various countries all over the world, who want to be involved in astrobiology, who want to be involved in astronomy, who want to be involved, but a lot of times they don't have the resources at home, the educational systems aren't in place, they don't know how to get involved. And it's our job, people like myself. I'm not, a senior in my career field, but I'm kind of getting there, I guess, now. I can admit that now. And as someone who hosts a show that's funded by NASA Astrobiology, someone who has a large network in the astrobiology community, I feel like it's my job to help those people find opportunities, help their voices be heard, and try to be there and be supportive for those people through what they're going through in their lives. Because I don't want to be the gatekeeper who holds someone back from contributing. There's so much more we can do. And actually, as a small aside, a very good friend of mine, recently, she was mentioning how one issue with NASA, with space exploration, has been, as Sian mentioned earlier, these gatekeepers, and that, currently the gatekeepers, the ones who get to say what the right stuff is, they are very much white men in America right now. still, and that's changing slowly, but not very fast, unfortunately. And one of the issues is the kind of language they use, even in advertising opportunities and new experiences and jobs. They use language that's very targeted towards white men and people of their same background. And sometimes they do it even subconsciously. They're not even aware they're doing this. So, for instance, my very
those microaggressions, yeah,
she had this example that's being studied in psychology of the language, for instance, for a call for a job. If you have on the application, you say, are you an expert in XYZ, versus do you have expertise in XYZ? That men tend to call ourselves experts a lot more willingly than some women will. Some women are more likely to say that they have expertise in a field because they've been told their whole lives that you can't be an expert. The gatekeepers have said you can't be an expert, and that's just not the case.
They deserve more.
It's just not the case. Everyone deserves more.
Shawna's like, yes.
Yeah,
I saw that.
We need to do this together.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point is that it's all of us. So we only have a couple minutes left, and we have so I want to hit Marc real quick. Marc, how do you feel about this? I know he's like, I'm smiling, I'm handsome. What do I say?
Yeah, like the whole concept that white male privilege to me has been such a deciding factor for
in the world.
Me. Like, it's something that I need to take accountability for, especially in acknowledging that it's been so invisible to me, because that's all I have to work with. It's just that perspective inside the problem. And so I think the only thing that I can do is encourage the conversation as much as possible, be aware, empathize, and know that I will very likely be in a position where I will influence this aspect in so many other people's lives.
Yeah.
And if I do not take upon myself the responsibility to be just simply aware, it's probably one of the biggest missights I would ever have in my life if I don't empathize and do my part. And beyond that, I really have no authority to speak on this subject at all. I definitely want to make sure that the people that have the sight to actually know what this issue is fully, because they've had so much pain from just not being properly represented for their self-worth, I want them to have the microphone. And when it comes to anything that I can say, all I can say is I will do everything I can to give you that opportunity.
The whole point right there. So, Shawna, we will go to you to wrap up with your final thoughts and what you think about this.
Yeah, and I think my fellow panelists have really paved the way for a really productive discussion tonight. And the way I want to further that is saying that every single one of us has a form of privilege that has allowed us to have the life and the position that we have today, myself included. So for me, the privilege has been stability in childhood, access to education. For me, education has been a great leveler, and that has, given me so much in life. And then the other part of it is, having people take the time to invest in me as mentors when they didn't have to. And so my call to action, or my final parting thoughts for those who might be out there listening today, is that regardless of where you are in your career, someone is looking up to you. And, even if you think you're just getting started, even if, you think you're in grade school, someone, whether you realize it or not, is, you're a role model for them. If you're in the 10th grade, maybe one of the 9th graders wants to be just like you. And so take that time to acknowledge what privilege you have, and then also take the time to use your platform to elevate others, to invest time, to, it can be just mentorship in passing. You don't have to form a lifelong relationship to be a mentor. And then, take time to give someone else that leg up, because that's how all of us, that's how I ended up where I am today. So, it's as Sian said, it's not going to be something that's solved overnight, but it is something that requires a collective effort from each and every one of us, regardless of, our gender, our background, or discipline. But we have to work together to bring all perspectives to the table, because it's when we have all of those perspectives at the table, that's when we set ourselves up to win. That's when we set ourselves up to perform at our absolute best. And it's in doing so, in constructing that environment together and coming at the table together, that we do that.
Awesome.
You know, I
Sian?
love that, Shawna. And what I love about everything that you're saying is that how important using, and I have a saying called space to inspire, but a lot of people are thinking that I'm talking about outer space, but no, I'm talking about you using your unique space to inspire those within your reach and beyond. And so if we can collectively take and do that, use our space to inspire and to mentor and to be just and equitable and all of those things, imagine what our world would look like if we could do that now.
Love it. Graham, to you.
So I want to start with where we're at right now in the conversation and then shift a little bit if I can. So one of the most important things to me in my whole life has been looking up at the sky at night and seeing the stars overhead. I think the heavens above us, they've inspired us for so long as humans, and through human history, our ancestors from so long ago, they looked at the heavens above and they created stories that placed them among the stars. They created stories that pushed them out to the planets they saw out there. They framed their understanding of the universe within what they saw in the night sky. And to me, I think the night sky is part of our natural heritage. It's something that allows us to connect. I can't imagine what it must be like to be an alien species on a planet where the atmosphere is so thick you can't see the stars. Those beings might never have created science or even realize that that there's more out there. The stars in the night sky gives us so much connection to not just our world, but to our past, to other people. And again, I'm going to come back around to this we. We together, we look up at the stars together. We together want to know more about our place in the universe. And one thing I've been thinking about a bunch lately is something like Starlink, and how it's been an issue with potentially taking away some more of that night sky from us. Right now, light pollution has made it so that I think the current estimate is some 85% of people in the entire world can't see the Milky Way at night. And it's just getting worse all the time. The more that we create more lighting for our cities and on our highways and everywhere else, we're taking away that natural heritage, that history. And at the same time, with something like Starlink, we are potentially creating opportunity for people. We are potentially making it possible for people who live in very remote areas to gain access to the internet. And that's huge. And so I kind of wondered actually if Marc could just give me, as an astrophotographer, his perspective on something like Starlink.
Hit us, man.
This is something that's really caused a lot of internal turmoil up until I realized one perspective that really changed everything. Like you honestly really touched on it really well when you talked about how our ancestors, when they looked up at the stars and they saw Orion, the constellation that just happened to look like the hunter that they had told stories about eons ago, and they had a connection. They wanted to physically put themselves up in the sky. The sky itself will be beautiful if you choose to see it in that manner. There's so many people that can go camping and totally forget to look at the Milky Way. I can't wait for the time where people look up at the stars, and sure, there might be glittering satellites flowing every single place that you look. And they might cause issues when it comes to getting really faint details from the sky. But I personally relate it to that exact same concept. Who was the person that spent 20 years of their life designing that one satellite to get it up into space? Did I freeze? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue on that phase. My concept is I always think of Jack Johnson. Is there's traffic in the skies and it doesn't look to be getting much better. But that traffic is us. I don't take issue with that one bit. if it's a matter of fact that when we look at the sky and it is more difficult to take away the sheer naturalness, natural aspects of the sky, at least we'll see ourselves in the sky. And it's a very philosophical thing for me, and I'm so biased when it comes to my perspective on what that object is that's causing that difficulty. I don't blame anybody for frustrations, especially if you're a scientist working with super sensitive CCD cameras